What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another My Week With video. So this week I am hanging out in the Hyundai Palisade here, which Hyundai kindly sent me to drive around in for a week, and it's been a really nice week with it. So I did a full review already on the Palisade a couple of months ago, and so you can go watch that video. I'll link it above to hear all the details about the interior and how it drives and all the specs and all that kind of stuff. This video is just focusing on what it's like to live with a Palisade for a week, because on the launch, when I did the original review, we only had a day with the vehicle, and so this gives me time to have some more developed thoughts on it, and I really like it. So previously the Telluride was always my go-to pick. It's my favorite of all the three-row crossovers. It's not the best handling, but I think it has the nicest interior for the money. It's the nicest packaging for the money, and so the Palisade was really the only unknown that I hadn't driven and hadn't experienced for a week yet. And so now that I've been in the Palisade for a week, I think that it is tied for first place with the Telluride, and I think it kind of will depend on your personal preferences. Obviously the two are styled very differently, so it comes down to partially what styling you prefer as far as which one you pick, and there are a few other small differences I'll get to with the Telluride in a minute, but I don't want this to just be a straight comparison video. So first, a little bit more focus on the Palisade. I have to say though, the ride is so smooth, and that is one way that this is better than the Telluride. The Telluride's a little sportier with its setup. It's still very soft and comfortable and would be a great family hauler 100%. But this just goes a little bit further. It's just a little bit softer, a little bit more refined, a little quieter in here. So I think it doesn't handle as well as the Telluride because of that. It still handles very, very well for a three-row crossover, but this is just a little more comfort-oriented in its setup, which I personally appreciate. I do also appreciate the sportier handling of the Telluride, so that again just comes down to a personal preference thing. But yeah, I really like this, and the ride, it's not like it's just smooth, like that word's thrown around very easily, but this is so smooth that I even quit dodging potholes. In Pittsburgh here, we have plenty of potholes, and usually you try and avoid them and stuff, but this was so soft that I didn't even care if I hit potholes. Like, that's how soft the Palisade is. This is more luxurious than I think a lot of the luxury competitors, at least the lower level luxury competitors like the Acura MDX and the Buick, the Enclave, and all those types of vehicles. This is a little bit softer than those, and honestly I think the materials in here are nicer than what you get with a lot of those entry-level luxury competitors as well, and so it just makes for a phenomenal value. But so that's one very good thing here is just the ride is fantastic. Another thing that's fantastic are the headlights here. That's one thing I didn't get to test whenever I had the Palisade last time, and so sometimes other vehicles, even if you are sitting up high, the headlights aren't fantastic, but that's something that especially with the IIHS putting a lot of pressure on that in order to get a Top Safety Pick Plus award these days, I think more and more companies are focusing on really doing good headlights. Another thing that was actually a little bit better than the Telluride, at least in my experience, was the fuel economy. So they're both rated about the same at 19 in the city, 24 on the highway, and 21 combined. But my week with the Telluride, I only got 17 mpg hauling around a decent amount of people. This time with the Palisade, I didn't haul around quite as many people, but I ended up getting 18.1 mpg here over about 120 miles of driving so far in the Palisade. So slightly better fuel economy, still beneath that 19 city number that is quoted. I did do, I'm doing like some just casual backroads driving here. I did do a lot of stop and go driving and things like that too, but it wasn't strictly city stop and go. So I think that city rating's a little optimistic, since both the Telluride and the Palisade here have fallen short of that. I do get a little bit beneath the city rating in most of my vehicles that I have for a week, but this, I was just hoping to get closer to that city number, but it is better than the Telluride. Again, I didn't do an identical driving loop in either vehicle, so it's not a direct comparison, but just something that I noticed here with my time with the Palisade. And for a large three-row crossover with all the luxury stuff this has and everything, 18.1 mpg is not too bad, honestly. And this engine is really great. Plentiful amount of power from this naturally aspirated V6. No turbos to worry about. No other things. It's just a good kind of old-fashioned engine that just does the job very well, and it's linked up to this 8-speed automatic that really never makes me wait for a shift. It is very well set up and very smooth as well, and so the driving experience is just really top-notch here in the Palisade, and I like it a lot. Having said all that, it wasn't a perfect experience here in the Palisade. There's a couple little things that annoyed me. One thing that I actually also dealt with in the Telluride is the auto rear hatch, which is something you can turn off. It's an option you don't have to have on, but basically if you stand behind the vehicle for more than like 3 or 4 seconds, that hatch automatically pops open whether or not you want it to open up. And so like there was a time where I was even walking out to the driveway with some friends, and I just wanted to stand behind the vehicle, and I couldn't stand behind the vehicle. I had to like walk away so that the proximity key didn't freak out and try and open the hatch on me. So that's a little annoying. It would be nice if you still had some type of gesture type thing. I know this is easier because you don't have to worry about kicking underneath the vehicle like you do with some competing vehicles, but I still would have preferred that, I think, instead of having to constantly rush around the back of the vehicle. Because even just walking around the back of the vehicle, if you put someone in the passenger seat on the passenger side there, and then you want to just walk around the back of the vehicle to the driver's side, you have to do that very quickly. Otherwise, it's almost like a timer. You're on this like countdown, and if you don't get around the back of the vehicle fast enough, it pops open. So that's a feature I would at least disable, but would like to have a better solution there. I'm not sure what would be a better solution. Maybe a little bit of a slower timer or something, but anyway, just one little thing. Another thing was that the Bluetooth in this vehicle, and this could just be because it's maybe an early production one or just this one in particular, but the Bluetooth was pretty glitchy, and every single time I went to try and use Bluetooth, it had me repair my phone every time I got in the car. So if I wanted to use Bluetooth, I had to repair it, and that is clearly something that shouldn't be functioning like that. It should remember your phone after the first time, and so that's something this vehicle needs to go to the dealer for, to have that addressed. Just make sure that if you do purchase a Palisade, just make sure the Bluetooth works. Get out of the vehicle, turn it off after you've paired your phone, get back in, and if it still recognizes your phone, you're good to go. But this one didn't do that, and so Bluetooth was basically worthless for the week that I used it. So that's just something to keep in mind. Not sure why that didn't work. Otherwise, though, like I said, it's very good. I think really the last thing to talk about here with the Palisade is the pricing of it, which is obviously phenomenal. It's a very solid value, and they've really done a good job of pricing it out so that there's nice spacing between the trims. So, if you don't need all the stuff, like this one I'm driving here is a limited, and this one as tested is about $47,600. And so that's fully loaded, top of the line limited. It gives you everything. But if you don't need some of the stuff, like this one has a heads-up display, I don't really like them that much. It's not worth paying extra for, at least in my opinion, because this one really only shows me my speed and the speed limit. And if I'm paying attention, I can see the speed limit, and if I'm paying attention, I can also just look at the nice digital gauge cluster and see my speed. So that's something. Now, you do only get the digital gauge cluster here in the limited. That is a cool feature with the blind view monitor and all those types of things. So that is something that, it just depends on whether you're willing to pay the extra money, but you can still get a slightly less high-end leather, and you can still get leather seats. You can still get a lot of nice features in an SEL Premium, and those will be about $4,500 less. Now, you don't, I believe, get as large of a screen here in the middle, and you don't get like a few other little features, and so it just depends on, how much you want it loaded up. But I think, the SEL Premium is a pretty good value as long as you don't need some of those top-end features. But even the base one, you still get all of them get standard Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. They still get a lot of the same great safety features. This has, of course, the automatic emergency braking is standard, and all those types of things are nice. So all these types of things, come on even a base one. And the nice thing is you can still get a base one with cloth seats if you don't need all the luxury and stuff, and it starts at a pretty competitive price too. So the Palisades will start around $32,645, including the destination fee there, which actually is slightly less than the Telluride, I think, by like a couple $100 or something. But then whenever you actually go up, like this one being a limited, is about over 47 and a half. That is a little bit more expensive than a fully loaded Telluride SX trim. Those, even with the all-wheel drive and all the options you can get on those, will still be a little less. I think just under 47, like 46 and change. Either way, these are both a phenomenal value, because you look at stuff like a fully loaded Honda Pilot Elite, those are $49,000. Like I said, some of this entry-level luxury stuff that is less nice inside than this is are well into the 50s, and all the other competitors, the Volkswagen Atlas, all those types of things, are going to max out in a similar price range as well. So the value value is really strong here in these, and like the Kia Telluride, this also has the 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, and that is also pretty unbeatable, again, unless you go for the Telluride. But other than those two, you don't get that kind of coverage. So if you're someone who flips cars every couple of years, then maybe that's not important. But if you are someone who buys a vehicle and holds it for a long time and drives it a lot longer, then that's going to be a really nice perk of the Hyundai or the Kia, and it gives you a little bit of additional peace of mind that the manufacturer is going to stand behind the vehicle longer than the competition does. So that's another nice feature here of these. Personally, though, now that I've spent a week in this and a week in the Telluride, I still think that I prefer the Telluride in a couple of ways. Just the way I personally just prefer, like, the styling of it. I prefer the way the suspension is set up in the Telluride with being a little bit, tiny bit firmer. I mean, I'm splitting hairs. It's not like it's firm or sports car-like or anything in the Telluride, but just a little bit firmer. This is just a little more mushy, I guess, which, again, if you're just wanting to cruise around in comfort with your family, this might be the better choice in that regard. And I definitely suggest test driving both this and the Telluride if you really want to, feel those differences for yourself. Personally, I like the suspension setup of the Telluride better. I also like the interior setup of the Telluride slightly better as well. I like the faux wood you have in the Telluride versus this just has this like sparkly plastic instead, and I'm not crazy about that. I think there are some trims of the Palisade where you can get wood, but all the limiteds I've seen have had this sparkle finish instead. And also you have the push button gear shifter here in the Palisade versus an actual gear shifter in the Telluride, which I prefer. And just the interior design and stuff is nicer. I also like how the Telluride, you have all your USB jacks and your charging ports and bins and all that kind of stuff are out in the open, a little bit more where it's like a little bit more forward. This one, your wireless charging pad and your USB and everything is a little bit further back, so it's a little bit more I guess difficult to access while you're driving because you have to look down a little bit more than just looking slightly down in the Telluride. Small differences, but because otherwise, like, your power outlet and everything else in the Palisade here is buried under this whole transmission tunnel area, and so it's a little bit harder to access, unless you are completely stopped and can actually bend over and look down at that kind of stuff. But so minor differences, but those things, just from after living with both for a week, I prefer the way things are set up a little bit more in the Telluride personally. So that would probably still be my pick. But again, they are like tied for first place, and I think they are best in class, and actually punching above their class pretty well there. So they just did an excellent job here with the Palisade. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me with the Palisade here to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Palisade and whether you'd pick it or the Telluride in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.